Hey everyone, it's Alex again, and I'm here to give my opinion on something that you all have already made up your minds on, probably. So instead of telling you how to believe about this issue, I just want to tell you what led me to change my mind on this particular subject. I'm going to talk about why I stopped saying all lives matter and started saying Black Lives Matter. I will say this very big caveat before I get started. The phrase all lives matter, or even Black Lives Matter, didn't come into existence until well after this point in my life. Just knowing how I felt on the inside at that particular time, this is when the change happened where I stopped having that mindset, if you will. I grew up in a nice neighborhood, for the most part anyway. A few nice neighborhoods. Almost always been in a homogenous setting. Growing up in a relatively wealthy Catholic and Protestant neighborhood, going to relatively wealthy Catholic schools, I've been mostly surrounded by white people my whole life. White and relatively wealthy areas my whole life, except for living in Japan when I was really young, which was also homogenous, but I was the minority and I was too young to really understand what that means conceptually. I remember first thinking that life's not fair really in high school, but my story starts before that. That mindset didn't start because the inner city YMCA team destroyed my mostly white Catholic basketball team in middle school. And the athletes were all black and way better than us. I had nothing against that. I thought the reason that I lost was fair and simple. I grew up believing in a meritocracy, a society governed by merits, if you will, although I really couldn't fully understand what that meant at the time. They were better than us, and they obliterated us, and they deserved it because, like I said, they were better than us. See, that's where the mindset starts. I grew up believing that if someone was better than the other person in a particular area, then they deserved whatever it was they were competing for. Now let's enter high school together. And then let's talk about college. When I started thinking about that, I got a scholarship to my high school because I did pretty well on the entrance scholarship test. That was fair because I deserved it. I got the highest tier in scores, top 8 or something. I thought, this makes sense. I deserve it. And as we got through school, I did pretty well. When we applied to university, I might have been the second in my class. I definitely didn't finish too bad. It's like second or third. But at the point where I applied, I was good. I can't remember for sure, but it was good, right? So our class started getting the results. From our perspective, we did well and we thought we might be going to some really good universities. And a few of us did, but we didn't do as well on the whole as we expected we would. I got waitlisted at a prestigious university in St. Louis. I missed out on a few scholarships at some of the more expensive universities that I applied to. I ended up going to a state university in Ohio called Miami University. Honestly, no regrets though, whatsoever. I'm very happy with how my life turned out. But I know at this point, I would have said all lives matter. Because, well, of what I'll say next anyway, which I'm not super proud of having believed. The next year, of course, one of the black students at our school got into Harvard. Because, of course, I don't think he was the top in the class. His SATs were really good, but still, of course, he got in. Here, I would have said all students matter. If I had gotten better grades and a better resume, or at least the same grades and the same resume, or so I thought, then clearly I should have gotten into my non-Harvard schools of choice with scholarship, especially if the black student got into Harvard. This is how I thought because I believed in what I perceived as a perfect meritocracy. The best scores should get in no matter who got them. Fair is fair, right? Well, I went to Miami University, which was a mostly white school, except for a pocket of Asian exchange students, black athletes, and then a few exceptions here and there. I think it was 88% white or something ridiculous like that. Nothing racist against the school. It's just, I think white people had a fantasy of going to a university surrounded by cornfields more than other races, plus the stigma of being a mostly white school didn't help with recruitment. I'm sure despite all the university flyers having a 75% ethnic minority representation ratio, anyway, that wasn't true. But I didn't get the best scholarship to this school either, and I definitely kept thinking, man, if only I weren't white, I'd have gotten more money. This isn't fair. And this is really how you can see the mindset of all lives matter. It's a white people thing, believing that we're being left behind when any sort of perception of preference is given towards someone who isn't white. And sometimes, though less often, when Asians feel like their grievances aren't being heard, when people are being racist against them, it can happen too. Not all white people say this, and obviously not all Asians say this either. To those people who shouted out today saying only Black Lives Matter seems unfair to them. You can hear it every time someone says, well, what about growing up poor and white? You think it was fair to me? Don't forget about the struggles that we had to face as well as poor white people. And I'll tell you what, I understand where they're coming from now because, well, actually, I used to feel the same way. Now, a quick aside, why I think Black Lives Matters is important by itself right now without addressing the other races to the equation right now is the need to focus on one problem at the moment, while keeping in mind the myriad of other problems that Asians and LGBTQ+, Native Americans, Hispanics, all these other people face, not just in America, but around the world. But if we just include everyone in the hashtags, it takes the focus away from the movement that needs to shine a light on institutionalized racism in our society and on the way of thinking that many of us have about Black people, which is often looking down on them. Just being honest at the state of the world. I mean, I feel terrible to say it, but I think that's real. I could be wrong on the exact reason to keep it at only Black Lives Matter for the hashtag, but that's not really the purpose of this video. The main purpose is to explain how I fell victim to that way of thinking. Why just Black Lives Matter? And how I came out of that way of thinking. And the solution is actually pretty easy, though it takes a bit of effort. When I finished my university life in the States, I moved to South Korea to teach English. And it was the first time I really put myself in a diverse environment. Talking about people, of course. And it's not just what you're thinking, being around Asians. It was more than that. I was around Asians, Koreans. I was around Korean Americans, Chinese Canadians, Black Americans, white South Africans, Black South Africans, Jewish people, Muslims, atheists, gay people, at least openly gay people. It was around people that were different than me, and it started breaking down my entire worldview. You know, growing up Catholic, you have a certain way of thinking about the world, or any other religion. It's probably the same. In some religions, you believe that Jesus Christ is the only one true way to salvation, or to heaven, or whatever you believe. Everyone else needs to accept Jesus Christ to pass the test on earth, or they're going to burn in hell, or go to limbo, or, again, whatever we believe nowadays. But to me, it was becoming close to the first non-Christians and non-white people in my life that started to dismantle the steadfast beliefs that I had. These Muslims were good people. Jewish friends, good people. These heathen atheists, good people. It made me question everything I thought about my alleged open-mindedness. That was my first realization that there was more to the world than my worldview. And of course, I had Asian friends, Black friends, Latinx, gay friends. I started to realize that a lot of my preconceived stereotypes about each group of people just weren't as true as I thought they were. Some stereotypes, yeah, maybe true. Like most of my white, straight friends, without a doubt, including myself, were some of the worst dancers I've ever seen. It's just true. But for the most part, I realized I had to drop my preconceptions about basically everyone. Granted, English teachers at that time coming over to Asia in 2009, 2010, we were a different bunch. We're not the average American or average Canadian or Australian, but still, there was enough information around me to realize that everyone was more similar than different. And as I started becoming closer to these friends, I would hear their stories, their struggles, everyone's struggles, I mean. White, black, gay, straight, poor, and yes, even rich. Everyone struggles. And I also would read articles they'd share on their social media accounts, and I would try to listen to their opinions on social issues. Although I haven't always been and still am not a great listener. I mean, look at me. I've been talking to you by myself into a camera for like the last 5 minutes or something. I like talking more than listening. And although I can't pinpoint the moment where I stopped mentally thinking all lives matter and started saying Black Lives Matter and changing my assumptions about Asians having it good in the American school system, and just overall realizing that the differences in the way we've been living, that, it means we have to look at everyone's situation as an individual, yes, but also as a collective, as a group shared experience to really understand how it all works. Although I can't pinpoint that moment, it did happen. And it happened because I was finally exposed to people with different backgrounds, of different ethnicities, and those people with different ways of thinking. Exposure was always my missing ingredient. Working together with people who were not American Christian white people, studying together, having beers together, playing sports. I mean, that's what it took. And that's what a lot of Americans and many other people around the world need right now, that exposure. So this video can be easily taken the wrong way. This isn't me standing on my pedestal and saying like, look at me, I'm so woke, and look how woke I am. I'm not. I guess I'm still waking up, whatever that means, and have a long way to go. And this is kind of a video for non-white, non-Christian, non-Americans on how to deal with people like me. You keep sharing your opinions online, at cafes, and in the bars that slowly eat away at the stereotypes over time. It can really work. I'm just sorry, we are stubborn and it does take time. But mostly this video is for other people who grew up just like me. This video is a reminder of the need to put ourselves in situations that aren't comfortable. In situations where we're not just surrounded by people who look and think just like us. Contrary to how it may seem, sending us to a church camp with a bunch of other white Christians doesn't exactly make us love all people more as Jesus wanted. In order to get us out of the mindset of all lives matter and get us focusing on the ways that each demographic, each group of people has been dealt a different hand in society, we've got to put ourselves, and I don't know what other way to put this, we need to join those clubs, organizations, friend circles. We need to hang out with people who are different from us. Period. And now when I look back at it, I do realize that if a white kid and a black kid in America with the same GPA and the same SAT scores apply to the same school, oftentimes the person that had to deal with more in their life, institutionalized racism, microaggressions, life struggles, deserves to get into Harvard, period. I don't feel like I was cheated out of those scholarships now. And how damn privileged I was because my parents still helped me pay my way through college. I was wrong for the way I thought, and for that I am sorry. Black students matter. I hope this video sheds light on why many people have the desire to say all lives matter. Understanding the other side doesn't mean I condone the use of that phrase, but it may help us understand how to explain this to those, why Black Lives Matter isn't as offensive as they think it sounds. Hope you're doing well out there, staying safe, and as always, I'll see you next time. Goodbye, Haseo. Yes, at the end of a series video, I dropped that.